Yeah, the recording is okay.
Right, so I guess I'm just kicking off with how I'm doing, and I'm just saying how I'm doing. This is not yet where I'm talking about what I'm working on, right?
No, it's just a check-in.
Okay, I am doing great. I'm fired up and happy to be here. I'm also exhausted and overwhelmed by the amount of work and trying to figure out how the heck one makes a living doing Catalyst full time. But bottom line, I am excited and happy to be right where I am.
Stephen, and then Matthias.
Yeah, I think I've got post-traumatic proposal syndrome, but apart from that, I'm fine and happy to be here.
Post-traumatic proposal syndrome. I like that.
Thanks, Stephen. Matthias and then Tevo.
Same. Didn't get a lot of sleep. Couldn't even do my hair. I haven't had coffee. I almost overslept this. So I'm doing great.
Excellent. Tevo, and then Kenric.
Yeah, I feel now a bit more refreshed. The proposal fine. When the deadline dropped, I was like, oh, finally it's over. And got some rest, and now I'm here.
Thanks, Kenric.
Very good.
Harris.
Yeah, great to be here. I think I'm more refreshed than others because 2 weeks ago, I had a deadline on an even bigger proposal. So I was forced to delegate my Catalyst proposals, and the team did really well. And so my role was mostly to check and mentor. So I feel very refreshed today and had enough.
Beautiful. Thanks, Harris, and then Raymond.
Yeah, definitely glad to be here for sure. Definitely feeling like there's a lot going on all at one time. Feel like I'm successfully going in 6 directions, but I think we've got 12 to go into at least, and we'll take it one step at a time and try to bring some order to everything going on. But glad to be here.
Raymond, and then JP.
Hey guys, I echo the overwhelming exhaustion. There's a lot of things happening. The SPO space is pretty crazy right now, especially with DEX ending, DEX starting. There's a lot of stake on the move. There's a lot of frustration in the community. There's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of excitement too. There's a lot of new things being built. Being here with my dad has been quite a journey. He's a bit on a zombie schedule. And he's in a lot of pain every day. So being with that is challenging. Most of the time I get to spend with him is in the evening, which pushes me to like 2, 3, 4 at 5 o'clock in the morning sometimes. It's really bizarre. So I'm definitely struggling to adjust and try to calibrate all these different schedules together, but I'm here. Glad to see you guys. So yeah, let's do it.
Thanks, Raymond. And I'm sure I speak for everybody. If you need any help from the crew here, just let us know.
Thank you.
Yeah. JP.
Yeah, thanks everyone. So happy to be here. I've been dealing with a pretty big fire in my day job this morning, so that's been fun. Panic writing for the minister, but it's been good. So I'm happy to be here, ready to take notes. When I take notes, I'll probably turn off my camera and just so you guys can see my screen, and you don't need to see my face. But thanks, guys.
All right, and I'll check in last. I'm also very tired. I was up late last night with proposals, hitting that railgun error with the kitten picture over and over again. It was kind of frustrating, but lesson learned, work out of a Google Doc and cutting and pasting. There's no fear of losing something that you spend hours putting into idea scale.
Yes.
And good news, my stake pool minted its first block yesterday
Hey!
at 5 p.m. So we were celebrating.
Wow.
And
Awesome.
then thank you. And then I'm taking a leadership course here, and we had a webinar last night, and everything just piling up with a time crunch and wanting to do the proposals and finishing them up, but having to go to a webinar and attend class. It was pretty stressful, but that on top of the stake pool minting a block was all this weird mixed emotions and excitement and late nights. But yeah, I'm here and I'm feeling pretty good. All right, let's jump into the agenda. Are you going to share screen, JP? Yes. All right, so for today's agenda, it looks like we have a question about the December 23rd meeting, keep it or cancel. Discuss criteria and vote on Catalyst sponsored proposals. Discuss should IOG CF Emurgo vote in Catalyst. That's an interesting topic. Discuss the expanded bicameral model, circle infrastructure, touch base on the emails, website, Zoom account, meetup. I would add Telegram and other things. GitHub tasks, and then concern about circle admin scope expansion. And just to mention, through some time zone issues and other things, we missed the submission for updating the CTC additions to the admin scope. So we should probably talk about that. All right. So given that, does anybody need to add anything to the agenda, or is anything on there concern anybody? Tevo says we seem to have a different version.
There is slight changes on the document, but not on the version what is on screen share. The title is also different. Maybe just send me the link because I took it from Slack. Maybe there's.
Yeah, so I just went to the link from Google Docs. That's where I pulled it from the folder. You have a different one, Tevo?
I opened something from the Slack. And
can you share the link to the doc you're editing?
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah, give me one second.
To me, I definitely see different formatting. So the page break is at a different point, but content-wise.
The one I opened from Slack, seems to have everyone in it. So.
Yeah. It could be just how it's rendering.
Yeah, I have them side by side.
Okay, so these are two different things. One is notes version and one is what we prepared agenda. Okay, I get it now.
Yeah, so I'm going to take the notes in a separate document. So then when we're going through the agenda, you can actually see what we're talking about. Otherwise, it's way too messy.
Okay.
And then if we want, we can impose this notes version as the agenda once it's done if people want. But it's just too much to go in the same document I was finding for notes. Makes it messy.
Okay.
Okay.
So maybe provide that link so that others can help you with the notes if they want to put something in there.
It's on the chat.
So it's in the chat.
Okay. From JP, I can see it
now. So getting back to the agenda, does anybody have anything to add or remove or have concerns? Going once, going twice. Okay, we'll do that. So let's start up with the stand-up and head into the Trello board. So same order, Allison, then Stephen. Kind of let us know, what did you do since we met last time? What are you planning to do in the next little while? And are there any things blocking you, or do you need any help from the group?
Okay, so lots going on. Obviously, lots of proposal finishing. My biggest focus was on the voter survey, actually changing it to a voter survey, not just going to be a survey of people who voted, but a survey of all potential voters, which will be a big undertaking. So I really hope that gets funded because it'd be a fun project. Also working on a roadmap to creating a legal entity. And it's interesting thinking about how to run all of this ADA that we're earning for all these various things that we're doing, challenge teams and proposals and CAs and voting through a legal entity. It's quite it's quite a project. So I have a proposal out there to document my journey so that other people could at least think about it. But it does raise the question for me, what is everybody else doing? And to the extent that they're not following a completely cut and dry legal process, is there any sort of risk for Catalyst that could come back, that the funds are being dispersed and not handled in a legal or compliant way? So just throwing that out there is something I'm sort of thinking about. Other things that I'm working on, Kenric and I have been talking about doing a Atala Prism DIDS project around community advisors. So we pitched that in the Atala Prism project, which was actually turned out to be the Atala Prism Challenge team, hosting a really interesting format for getting their proposers to pitch, which is something I definitely want to think about as a challenge team member. And then I did, as a follow-on for my office hours, I did a video with a YouTuber, which was super fun today. I really enjoyed it. And I'm trying to organize my next office hours and getting more advance notice and more time zone options. So what am I working on before the next meeting? I really want to develop a better structure for the office hours concept. I think that's the biggest thing that I want to, well, I guess maybe three things that I want to work on. Improving the office hours structure, starting to think about the survey concept, because even if the proposals we have out there aren't funded, there's other stuff to do with the Fund 6 data that's relevant to the role. And the third thing is starting to think about the next election. So there was a flurry of stuff with proposals, none of which actually got submitted, which is sort of hilarious after all the time I spent thinking about it. Yeah. Okay, so what's blocking me? The biggest thing that I need right now is infrastructure tools. So I realized when I was putting the office hours slide together for the town hall that there's not a central place for people to go to find that information or to contact me. And I think getting an email set up is on me. I think I've missed that entirely, but I need to circle back with whoever is doing that. Or it occurred to me I could just create a Gmail, generaladarep@gmail.com or whatever. Because I'm trying to think about building structures that not only benefit me for the next 2 months, but that are easily transferred to the next rep. So sending people to my personal Twitter, while great for me in terms of building my own followers, is not really the desired outcome here in terms of setting up the role to be transferable to the next person.
Yeah, just, to interject on that, I'm facing the same thing, that I got the original email, but I didn't register in time, and I've tried to follow up, but I'm not getting the response at this point.
So I have a meeting with Michael in 3 hours to transfer control of the domain name and the Google email workspace to the admin team, so that we're able to act faster on these requests. So hopefully we'll have things resolved by today, and then we can work with you individually to get the email set up and any other domain name, website accounts, things like that set up.
Okay.
And maybe we need a channel in Slack to just coordinate all of the requests and different IT things that we need to do to support you all. Because I think, yeah, that's one of the big goals that we want to be able to provide. And right now we're a little bit blocked because some of the stuff is in places where the rest of the team can't get to, and the person in control of it is way too busy to jump in to help out. So we want to kind of resolve that so there aren't any bottlenecks anymore.
Thank you. And is anybody, well, I'll save this for later, but I was going to say, do we have a website, a Catalyst Circle website, or even a Catalyst website? Yeah, things I've been thinking about.
Yeah, in theory we do, but again, that's the domain name thing, and we have we need to get control over it, and then we can
I see. It's
start
okay.
to set things
Same,
up. Yeah.
same
Yeah,
same answer. Got it.
I think we have catalystcircle.io. That would be where the home would be for that. For Catalyst itself, there are some references on the Cardano Foundation set of pages, and we are looking at possibly trying to stand up some type of landing page, at least for Catalyst, because that does not truly exist. Idea Scale is sort of the closest we have to that right now.
Yeah. Wow.
There is just a quick thing. There is some sort of a Catalyst version 1, like a Git website that's out there. It's very well organized. It's like a history of everything that happened in the previous cycle. I don't see anything like that for version 2 yet, but that first iteration is actually, it's very good. It's a nice landing. It makes it easy to understand what Catalyst Circle is. I don't know if you guys are aware of it or who put that together, but there is something out there already.
Yeah, I think that's the Catalyst Circle Gitbook. I did that, Raymond, for the first term, and it's now been replaced by a version 2 one, which has been done by Vanessa of QA DAO, but it's not being promoted. It's on a separate Gitbook, but we need to promote it better and to link it in. The links to the version 2 are on Town Hall slides now. So.
Oh, I see. Okay. Oh, nice work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I need those links. That's exactly what I'm looking for. That's it for me.
Okay.
Stephen, and then Matthias.
Yeah, it's mostly proposal related. The headlines I put together with Allison and Tevo a list of Fund 7 proposals to be considered for sponsorship by Circle. I posted that in chat. As to proposals themselves, the one that relates to Circle, again, I'll post the links in chat. They're there. The significant ones are the ones, I suppose, that Dora also mentioned at Town Hall, which was the community governance oversight, which was a bit last minute, but we had a meeting with Dora yesterday, and we thrashed out a best draft as I could make it for that. We discussed the scope of governance oversight, and I suggested that it focus on challenge settings, Catalyst Circle problem setting, and modifying the governance parameters, which is its current scope. The scope of funded proposals is being taken up by another proposal called Catalyst Audit Circle, which was originally conceived by George Lovegrove, and I've kind of adapted that. And it's on a similar model to the community governance oversight. So it's like 2 complementary governance oversight proposals, one focused on funded proposals and one focused on the other elements of governance. And also putting a Catalyst Coordinator Hub proposal, which relates to the kind of platform I'm building for this role and to support frequently asked questions for Catalyst coordinators, and a Fund 8 Challenge Team Hub. I've now brought on Quasar as a partner on that to build a platform for the challenge teams for Fund 8. And what I'm planning to do next is to move away from those proposal drafts and move more back to funded proposal work, and to look at gathering feedback, particularly for the funded cohort, funded proposers. And I've already started developing feedback in this repository here, and trying to take more of an active approach to that. I don't really have any blockages as such, but that's it in headlines.
Thanks, Stephen. Matthias, and then Tevo.
Yeah, so as planned, I met with Frederick, right, CEO of the Cardano Foundation. So that made the foundation's role in Catalyst much clearer to me. That was positive. I also checked in multiple times with the Ambassadors Guild, including in yesterday's after town hall session and after town hall session was awesome. The last 2 weeks have been with everything that was going on. Also, I think one theme was apparent, which was the discussion on open source versus general developer ecosystem challenge. I had input from the foundation and also from some funded proposers and the general community in various mediums. So what ended up happening there was we have ultimately, because we do want to push open source, but we also acknowledge that not everything can be open source, especially at this point in time. We have the split and the discussion of, okay, I think the open source developer ecosystem challenge ended up at setting the budget at 2 million, and in the general developer ecosystem challenge set the proposal, the fund size to 1 million, so the requested funding amount, right, to indicate this is where we want to go. But we'll have more discussion going forward around that. Another big discussion point was more generally on how to onboard interested, but also people not yet exposed to or not friendly, that are not friendly to Cardano yet. And that kind of really leads into the work going forward, which is the community. We're essentially redefining ambassadorship, what it means to be. And for that, we have the Ambassadors Guild, and we want to increase the clarity on the Ambassadors Guild, internally figure out the different areas where we want to work on. And not everything is related to a catalyst, but that is obviously a big part, and the part that I'm working in. And to that end, we want to continue engaging the community in more dialogue and finding out what we can do as the guild prior to, the funding that's hopefully come at the end of this fund. Don't really have blockers, just grateful for the team, especially on all the great proposal work. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Matthias. Tevo and then Kenric.
Yeah, so first week, obviously the main attraction was Berlin trip with a lot of community members, where 3 of them were previous Catalyst Circle members. So morning and nights, just talk about what we do in governance and lining, and giving insight of what we do here, how do we do it, and where to go on. On the second week, heavy work on proposals and submissions. So coupled with few proposal workshops, also educating and helping others to get their proposals through. Now this has this proposal like education and actually even community advisor education will continue in the next 2 weeks. With the proposals, what I mean is like improving the model for the newcomers and existing people. And as I see, I think some live sessions, like Q&A sessions, will be held. One of the blockers is actually the same one which was the last one. So I guess I don't know how to leverage admin team, or like how to get like the tasking going on, because we don't have like a Kanban board or like a clear process. So will the problem sensing or tool sensing pretty much I will just take it as an action item for my next few weeks and create the invitation guide, share it in the Slack, and who is there, he can take it, share it in the network. If not, I will just do it myself in my network and hopefully get enough material to finally fill the gaps what we have in the ecosystem. And
on that blocker, I just want to make sure that because we're supposed to resolve blockers during the Scrum. I'm not sure the admin team had a clear idea of what you needed from them. And our current mandate is to facilitate the meetings, take notes, and support the infrastructure like email accounts and stuff. So this seemed to be outside of that scope, I think. I'm not sure. So maybe there was just an expectation setting or some clarity needed, because I don't know if the team needed or understood what you needed from them.
Yeah, this is exactly it for me also, like a clarity to understand what somebody does. Is at some point it feels like we're not here to take all the actions, and that the secretary role is like who helps to share and do this kind of like documentation in a sense. But there, like we see there, this is not fluid, and we're not quite sure, and very young process to have this. But in order to move on faster, I think for now I just take it on me and run it with it, else we just I don't know, just talk. Yeah, that's also there is an agenda about the GitHub tasks. So I would like to start also working on GitHub tasks, but this depends on also how do we clear this up and how can we start using it. And we can discuss about that later.
Okay, thanks, Tevo. Kenric, and then Harris.
Yes, so as Allison explained, she and I have been taking the Atala Prism Pioneers course, and we're working together on a project to provide digital identities for the community advisors. Right now, that's just kind of scoping out what we'd like to accomplish. And then I think we'll work on it beyond the course, which ends next week, and plan to submit a proposal for Fund 8 on that. I hosted a community advisors question and answer session yesterday, which I think went really terrific. And I especially appreciated Phil joined the call and did a walkthrough of the community advisors tool. So that I think was really helpful to, I think about 20 people showed up for that breakout room. So we had a nice conversation, went through a lot of question and answer things, and I'm planning to do, and so I can slow down if, let me know, JP, if you're, but for next week, I'm planning to do a similar question and answer for the veterans CA role. And then also I've compiled some questions that didn't really get answered very well that we'll also discuss it next week. And then as I look forward, I'm going to plan either in 2 weeks, or maybe I'll wait to the third week to do kind of a CA feedback meeting to get some feedback on how things went. And that will kind of kick off a more formal activity of trying to improve the process. And there's already work from the previous team to do that. And I'm aware and I agree with those initiatives. I haven't made progress on them yet, but that's sort of the way I'm prioritizing things over time. I don't have blockers at this time. but I'm sure as I dig into making improvements, that's when I think I know there's things that are going to require the circle and the community's support in order to make changes. So, I'm sure, I'll need help with that once I'm further along.
Thanks, Kenric. Harris, and then Raymond.
Great. Yeah, no, definitely been incredibly active working on really plans for the roadmap for Voltaire, just in terms of what it is we want to accomplish, as well as, exactly the mechanisms and ways in which we'll work towards transitioning things more into the community over time. And so that's definitely been taking a big bulk of my activity and time. I have been doing a bit in trying to support proposals. I feel like I probably could have done more to support and help and drive those proposals. So thank you for everyone stepping up and pulling that together. Really appreciate your support on that. But trying to at least get some clarification of what things are, some of the activities that we did. We had a couple of meetings related to that. And, I think it certainly would have been great to have had this meeting prior to the release of the proposals and the timing, but it's something we might look at from a timing perspective of when we meet, maybe align it around these things, since the proposals are so important to moving the needle for what Catalyst Circle is doing. I definitely spent some time thinking about the parameters pilot and trying to build out that overarching story of how we're going to approach it. Definitely want to make sure that we have clarity on that. Happy to spend time in this meeting to review that in more detail, discuss what was presented for sure, and working on trying to formulate how that governance structure will fit into that specific pilot. Timing, things like that is something I think we need to also continue to discuss. Also spending a lot of time on APIs. So there's a lot of pieces that we're looking to bring into governance APIs and a governance SDK that will help external teams outside of IO to build tools and to have capabilities. And so that's a big piece of my undertaking and something that I'm trying to bring to the table, understand existing APIs and how they are working today. I think there's partially a communication disconnect. Maybe people don't know where to find them. I know there's some great teams within IO that are building some great documentation. So I've been spending a lot of time aligning with that. Thinking about different voting mechanisms and how we can put some of those things in place. And so these are just some of the activities I've been working on. But I do want to communicate kind of our plans of roadmap. We're still in kind of the throes of getting that reviewed, and I'm hoping to share more and more on that soon. So those are some of the things I've been working on. What I'd like to share, next time we meet is a bit more on the feedback. I know I did share some of the data that we had for feedback, done some analysis of that feedback. I can share some of the high level numbers, but it's something I haven't closed out yet. It's something I'm interested in still closing out, feedback from Fund 6. So that's definitely something that I'd like to get done. And then, continuing to support, the definition of the Catalyst Technical Council, how we move that into some type of action is sort of what I'm going to be working on, as well as continuing to hammer out the roadmap for Voltaire and what we're doing there. And I don't have any blockers per se, other than needing more time in the day.
I think a lot of us feel that way. We should partner with the Mammoth project and see if they can add a clone CC.
Yeah.
As part of that. Raymond.
All right. So I feel like these last 2 weeks for me were the least productive in terms of my role as an SPO here in the Catalyst Circle. But with that said, the sense I'm getting is that I'm about a week behind. It's almost as if I need this extra week in terms of a lot of the deadlines that were coming up within the Catalyst ecosystem itself. By the time I got to most of the SPOs that needed to be or wanted to be in that space, it was already too late. The good news is that, and just in some cases by just a few days, a day in some cases, some SPOs are aware of what's happening in Catalyst ecosystem and have submitted proposals, some of them very good. Most of them were not, is what I'm finding. At large, the community is either unaware of what Catalyst Circle even is, or that there's even a challenge that specifically supports the SPO community. And the rest of them that are aware of it, I can break up into two groups. The groups that are optimistic and don't care about previous results from the way that the ecosystem is funding projects. And then the other group is frustrated and sort of kind of sees Catalyst as a big popularity contest that they can never win. So there's this sentiment specifically among small pool operators that it's sort of this losing game. So that's kind of where I was in my problem sensing side of things. The progress that I did make at this point, once I saw that I was about a week behind the edge of helping people get into the ecosystem and move with proposals, I switched over to making sure that the community is aware that we exist and what our function is, not only as Catalyst Circle, but the Catalyst ecosystem itself. So I found myself in quite a number of Twitter spaces. That's a whole new thing for me. It's also a very rapidly developing forum. And I found that space to be actually very effective in reaching a very large number of people very quickly. And in most of the circles that I was in, I spent quite a bit of time speaking about Catalyst Circle and what it does, and that we exist, and that we're here to help funnel consensus around the needs that we have as an SPO community. So what's happening is that the SPO community is becoming aware that we exist and that the Catalyst ecosystem, it also supports them directly. And that there is a CA role for people to take, and then there's a mutually beneficial incentive process there as well. What I didn't do that I will be doing here in this next week is I am going to follow through with office hours. And that's going to be in the form of letting the community at large know when I'm available specifically for discussion around anything that has to do with Catalyst Circle and the Catalyst ecosystem. And that will include holding Twitter spaces on a regular basis to hold a forum for people to get involved and to chat and to have that feedback loop. Besides that, there's no real blocks. You know, I think what's happening is, like I said, I'm in that week behind kind of space. So I sense that I'm going to be calibrating, and I will catch up, at least in the sense of being useful and helpful in the role and to the SPO community. So that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Thank you, Raymond. That gets us through our stand-up. Next on the agenda
Hey, before we move on, can I ask
Yeah.
a quick request for help? I forgot to mention this earlier. Is anyone attending the Eastern Town Hall tomorrow or Saturday? And if so, could you publicize my Eastern hours geared office hours?
Yes, is it tomorrow? Or is
I
it?
can do that.
Yeah,
Saturday.
tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
Saturday. Thank you, Tevo or Stephen, or maybe I'll just send you both the info, and if either of
Yeah.
you could share that, I'd be grateful.
Sure, we will.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the consent agenda. First thing on the topic is our December 23rd meeting. We're getting into the holiday season and it's might be challenging. Do we want to keep it or skip it? What are your opinions?
I vote for keeping it since I missed the other one because of the holiday. So I'm kind of wanting to get into the groove of this, but that may be different for other people.
I don't know what is holiday. I keep it.
Yeah, it's fine for me. It doesn't impact any of my holiday plans.
That's fine
Yeah.
for me as well.
Fine for me.
Oh
Fine
gosh,
for me.
Yeah, same sentiment as Tevo.
I actually find that really sad.
Yeah,
We'll put it on there.
We can celebrate together.
Yeah. We all have to wear Christmas hats.
Something.
Bring
A
my
holiday
sweater.
themed meeting.
Our
right.
stockings.
All right.
I'll bring
No.
the,
Now in the
bring it.
news, Catalyst Circle hates Christmas.
Yeah.
Being-
That'll make us more popular.
Yes. Okay.
I'll sing
It
you guys a song.
sounds like we have general consensus to keep it. Just to double check, if anybody wants to speak out, raise your hand right now. Otherwise, we'll pass it as kept. Okay, we'll move forward. Next up is discussing criteria and process and vote on Catalyst sponsored proposals. I'm not sure who put that up, probably Allison.
So yeah, yeah, good guess. Yeah, so this has been on my mind for a couple of reasons. One, I think we're funding the work of the circle through these proposals. So I think it's important to think through how we use the maximum leverage that we have from this platform to promote those proposals because they're critical to the work that we do. On the other end of the spectrum, it seems to me that it's important to be careful that the circle doesn't come to seem a platform where we each promote the proposals we're working on that are our own projects that we just want to get funded. And I mean, on the one hand, those two things overlap very much. The work that we're doing as part of the circle needs to be funded, but I think we should avoid the appearance of, cronyism or whatever. We're just doing this to figure out how to get our own proposals promoted. So what I was working towards or starting to think about, and as Stephen mentioned, he and Tevo and I started to have a meeting on this topic, is number one, what's the process for how we decide as a circle which proposals are quote unquote circles or circle sponsored? What's the criteria, and then what does it mean for a proposal to be circle sponsored? So yeah, that's what was on my mind when I put that point out there. I guess I would open it up for what your thoughts are on that, on those questions.
I will continue because this is where I took off and ideated and added more, in my opinions there. One of these that I think, yes, at the start, it's going to be like a community members be like why they are selecting some specific proposals and voting for them. But I hope that this will actually increase that like community and circle. I hope what happens is that the community starts asking us, why is this proposal not there? This is also very important for this community and Project Catalyst in general. And this is way like we get the proposals from the community and we then discuss and have like time dedicated to go through this, to vote. And to me, what does it mean to be sponsored? I was thinking perhaps something to have a specialized slide for the town halls, which most of the people show, and it may, and yeah, that's like the first thing. As a process, I created today and pretty much an election process. If others feel like this could be an option to use, then I can show you through screen share how to onboard. But basically, the idea is that using a chain vote application, it's put on Hyperledger. We see each other emails, but I think this is not the problem with us. I listed there all the proposals, what we gathered before over the weekends and weeks. And what we do there is we pretty much just vote yes or no or abstain on these proposals we have gathered to the list. And yeah, then we see the results, and the election will last 7 days. It opens actually this at the midnight. And that's it for me.
So that's an election process for what specifically?
Selecting proposals of does this proposal require Catalyst Circle promotion?
Do you support the sponsorship of this proposal by Catalyst Circle? I think is what Tevo means, Harris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to provide some historical context, the previous circle, the proposals they made came out of the problem sensing pipeline. So they did some exercises to problem sense what was going on in the communities, and then they moved it. You've seen the Trello board, and we've yet to add to that. But I think having that as a mechanism to problem sense and find a solution and talk about it and pair up or have 3 or 4 people working on something and having a proposal as the output of that gives it a whole lot more visibility and legitimacy that this is a circle thing rather than a pet project of somebody that they're just popping in as a proposal for circle approval. So that's something to consider, that mechanism is there, and it might be useful to use it to figure out which proposals make it through the pipeline as a solution to a problem sensed problem.
My perspective, I generally think only the Catalyst Circle should only support circle-specific proposals that are related to things that come out of, as Nori just said, problem sensing, or that relate to our infrastructure, our future organization. Having said that, I can see what Tevo is saying, coming from that there are important proposals in the community, but somehow we need to do some problem sensing perhaps with the community to identify what the community would like, what the proposals that the community would like us to talk about, I suppose. That's how I would put it. And I mean, I would support voting on as an experiment, but maybe out of the meeting and then going, doing it that way.
Could we also clarify, and I'd like to just understand this better, the distinction between funding for the operation of the circle versus funding that's specific to an initiative? And the way I would define that distinction, for instance, is that there are awards given to voters and CAs that are separate from the proposal process. And that's just part of the operation of Catalyst. And it's my understanding that you have some operational expenses, particularly like some compensation for the administrative team. Has that distinction been made in the circle funding, or how is the circle currently funded? What is the process?
The current funding for the circle was in a Fund 6 proposal that actually sought compensation for each of the 5 elected positions. And then there was also a compensation for 1 secretary and 1 facilitator. And after that point, the admin team kind of became the admin team. So we're running at a compensation deficit. So the admin team has an additional proposal in Fund 7 now to compensate the existence of an entire team to support the circle. And the treasurers have a similar proposal in Fund 7. Now that we have money, we need to figure out proper accounting mechanisms and those kind of things. So it's evolving fairly quickly. And in the original Fund 6 Catalyst Circle proposal that was funded, there was a little section in there to pay for website, Zoom, domain name, and a few of the infrastructure-y type of things as well. So there is money there, and we're actually trying to get the treasury team spun up really fast, and they're putting in mechanisms right now. So because we know that we need to actually transfer funds to each of the elected positions here, because that was what was funded for, so that your 10 hours a week is compensated. So that's something we hope to facilitate here shortly as well. So that's all in the works.
Right, and I guess maybe what I'm suggesting to think about is whether there should be a distinction between operational expenses that really aren't optional in order to run a circle versus initiatives that you really do require kind of the community support to take on that initiative. And if the operational part of it, there can be maybe, I think there should be community support for that change, but maybe that should be kind of a one-time change of some kind of award mechanism rather than a proposal funded mechanism to cover operational expenses.
So you're arguing for a mechanism outside of the proposal process for the operational side of things.
Well, let's put it this way. I think some of what the circle does has aspects that are similar to awards for voters and awards for CAs, right? And we wouldn't make that something that is voted on by the community, because that's a kind of fundamental mechanism of how the process works.
Good. Allison, you had something you were going to say?
I just want to wait. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think Kenric's making a really important point, the differentiation between operational expenses and initiatives. That's really well said. And I'm actually very lost, and this gets on to the next couple of points here farther along. But with the new expanded circle, the bicameral model, there are a number of proposals that are tied to that, including the expansion of the circle admin scope. And I think all of those should be circle supported. I think they're related to the operation, the core operations of the circle. But I'm a bit lost as to what's going on with all of those proposals, who's doing what and how they relate to funding the circle, the operations of the circle.
Yeah, I do really like your proposal, Kenric. Just breaking down an infrastructure type proposal, and maybe we're assigning specific labels that this is a Catalyst Circle infrastructure proposal that's being put out there to support operations. I think that might make sense that we label it, and then as we are problem sensing, labeling it as an initiative, for the community to tackle. So we disambiguate between these two different types. And I don't know if that's just a simple label. I certainly like the idea that if someone is voted in and you perform the function, that there may be just a mechanism of a payout similar to the incentives like the CAs. I think as long as we set up the infrastructure to have the checks and balances of, okay, was the job performed, these kinds of things. So it's not a guaranteed expectation, but maybe there could be something that comes from the fund, because that's how CAs and things are being rewarded now, and that is actually part of the Catalyst parameters. And the end game is to have the circle and other bodies, prospectively to help set what those parameters are. So perhaps that's the introduction of a parameter that says, oh, Catalyst circle member shall be paid this, right, as a reward. And that actually could be a Catalyst parameter that we help to decide on.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had in mind. Right.
Yeah. Oh, we got questions. Okay. Anyway, just some of my thoughts, but yeah, let's maybe hear from others.
Thanks for raising hands, people. Matthias and then Allison.
Yeah. Thank you for seeing me. I know over there. Somewhere here. It's hard to see. Yeah, like here. There's my hand. Okay. So just to clarify, am I hearing that we want to make the continuation of the Catalyst circle not reliant of the Catalyst process? That we want to ensure. I
see it differently than that. That's not the way I would phrase it. What I'm saying.
Okay, but is that the gist of it?
No. I think Harris explained it better, that there are parameter settings that actually run the operation of Catalyst right now. And so two of those parameters are the awards provided for voters and the awards provided for community advisors. What I'm suggesting is that there should be a award provided to circle members that's part of the parameters of operating the system. Because I don't think that the compensation of the circle and then also this technical council should be dependent on a community vote every quarter, right?
Got it. So, okay. So thank you for clarifying. So you are saying that you don't want people to vote on the further existence on.
I think a one-time vote might be appropriate, but for instance, if you were employed by a company, would you be okay with the company voting every quarter, whether you got compensated or not?
I mean, that's kind of besides the point because we're not employees, and trust me, right. I mean, I've mentioned it many times in various forums that I think we should not expect people to volunteer their time if they provide continuous value and set the expectations that, well, you know what, you got to work for free here. That's not how it works. It's not sustainable. So I'm in favor of fair compensation. But the cattle circle is also a human sensory array. Human sensor array. And I think a good indication of, I mean, there's been many great things coming out of the cattle circle, and the proposals here are great as well, that members of the circle contribute to. So I see value. I think version 2 is a little bit early to say, okay, let's set this in stone. Let's make it so that it's for the foreseeable future, because when will the community be able to change those parameters anyway? And it also kind of leads into the next point.
Yeah, it's certainly raising good questions, and maybe a way to think about it too is that as I understand it, the creation of the circle was not voted on by the community. That was a decision made, by IOG primarily, who's helping to facilitate the formation of this community, and then a recognition that in order for the community to have lasting value and leadership, there was a need for a circle, right? So then if for instance there was going to be a proposal as to whether the circle members should have an award, then there would also need to be a proposal as to whether there should be a circle, right? Would we put up, you know, because I think the two things go together, you know, you made the point that people shouldn't be expected to just volunteer, that, you know, if they're contributing, that should be compensated. So if we're going to put it to a vote as to whether there should be compensation, I think you're also putting it to a vote as to whether there should be a circle.
Okay, I get it. And just to, you know, those are just my opinions. And I think my opinion should not matter more than like any other Catalyst member's opinion. I'm not even just talking about the circle, right?
I think these are really timely conversations because we are talking about putting forward a bicameral body to decide these very things. So this may be a really good first use case to have that conversation with the community through the expert pencil back to the circle and do these things as a parameter change.
Well,
Allison.
Yeah, so two points. The first is regarding parameter changes and the bigger picture of how the circle members are compensated. One thought that I had building off of the election method proposal that Victor had submitted and I was supporting, which has now been withdrawn, which is that circle members could be elected through the idea scale platform, that the challenge would be for the circle members, for the circle seat, the budget would be the compensation for whomever is elected, and the proposals would be each candidate's nomination. And then voters would vote. The voters would vote, but then the compensation would be built in. It would be the challenge budget. And the circle and the CTC could decide what the budget would be for the challenge, which would be the candidate's compensation. But second point, we're getting a bit far afield from the original question, which is what do we do with the handful of proposals that are now locked in Fund 7 that we need to decide if we're gonna, how we're gonna promote them and which ones are circle sponsored. And I think I would roll into that the circle admin scope proposal too.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. We should probably get back to the topic, but I want to give Raymond and Tevo one last soapbox opportunity on this topic, and then we can switch back to the primary agenda.
Awesome. Yeah, I was going to come back to the topic. And I like what Allison just said as well. My feeling about this piece of the discussion, just to wrap it, is that this is CCv2, right? And it's a fast iteration cycle, and it's also the baby steps in Voltaire. So I think it's a good idea to balance how experimental this is with the need that we have to perpetuate what we do. As far as the proposals go, what I would like to suggest is that some part of those 10 hours that we're putting aside every week go into spending additional time, possibly all of us together, but focusing in a proposal review jam, if you will, where we get together and our exclusive focus is the proposals that relate to Catalyst Circle, so that by the end of that meeting, we're very clear on where we want to be and what we're doing together. So but that's what I suggest.
Thanks, Raymond. Tevo.
Yes, I support what you just said, and that there is what I want to get back to. We have these, I've been actually talking about two different proposals here. One are proposals what Circle created to improve the system itself and a bit of Project Catalyst, but there are other proposals what I see from the community which also improve either the ecosystem in Project Catalyst or the system itself. So there and what just Raymond said, what with this, if I may, I would actually show you the platform. There is the list of all the proposals, and what this exercise gives us also is that we read our own proposals. We read what is deemed to be valuable right now from the circle, but once we show the results in a town hall, and when this video comes out and people actually some know that this is going to happen, and this is again, yeah, they will show and bring up their ideas, their proposals. If there is going to be a lot of them, that's great news, because now they actually care about what Catalyst Circle is doing, what they're voting on. And we might need to, again, improve our governance system. How do we handle like voting on hundreds of proposals? But for now, I think it's important to start with the early steps and reading what we amongst us created and the few which we pointed out ourselves.
I did want to just add one thing. You know, if we, I think we need the existence of a circle and at least a group of people that represent the community, at least to begin with, to help set the stage for a handoff to the community, right? Because IOG is in the seat right now, and we want to hand that to the community, and so there's got to be at least some representation to start with. So I think we need a circle of some type, and then once the decision making is outside of IOG, then it's up to that body to help decide what's next. But our objective is to transition to outside of IOG as the custodian. And so we're certainly open to other proposals for how to do that. But right now, this is kind of the recommendation we have from our folks internally from the research side on an approach to try this.
It sounds like we have two kind of, I don't know if they're action items yet, but at least problem sensed things that we should probably focus on. Maybe not right now. One is to talk about the Catalyst parameters, and if Catalyst Circle admin team and the infrastructure bits makes for a good first kind of candidate to discuss in that space. And then the other one, as Raymond suggested, perhaps another meeting outside of the circle meeting for people who want to get together and discuss the proposals and actually go through them. I think it's probably not a good use of our meeting time here to do that. But I would also suggest that the circle comes up with criteria that you can all agree on what are the things that you look for. And some of the concerns raised, just to summarize, around not having that cronyism or sense of favoritism leaking in. So there should be a set of criteria. Another one is to focus on the problem sensing pipeline and make sure that we're coming out the other side and have a good sense, just so that it's transparent and easy for people. So it's not like a personal kind of, I like it or I don't like it, but a set criteria that we use to decide whether it's circle supported or not.
Very good.
And I guess in past meetings, you spent a good amount of time actually going through the Trello board. And I think we should definitely get back to that focus of the sensing, for sure. But to address the original point on this agenda item, how do we promote it? I don't know if we've addressed that.
How do we promote
our proposals? I think. Allison.
Okay, so there are two things now. One is that I given. Okay, actually no, that's the two different things. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it was to come up with a process to promote.
Process is there. I need either your emails or you create an account and join into the group.
Right, Tevo, that's the voting side, but what I'm talking about is how does the process the circle uses to decide what the criteria are for voting and what's in and what's out. We need to clarify that first, or I think the vote will not be representative of good process.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like actually there's a whole project around just this question that somehow needs to happen, you know, very quickly.
Yeah. Does somebody want to own taking that and running with it, setting up a meeting, having a discussion amongst yourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the one who raised this. I'm happy to do this unless unless there are any objections.
I will join you. Thinking grows is
Happy to help you, Allison.
Yeah,
All right.
happy to be
That's
involved
indeed.
also.
All right. Sounds like Allison,
Okay.
you can run with it and you have support from most of the circle to help out.
Okay. Excellent. I'm going to create a space where we start listing criteria, and I'll get a meeting on the calendar for sometime next week, probably around this UTC, whatever time our meeting normally is, because I know that at least hypothetically could work for everyone.
Thank
Great.
you.
I'll try and participate if I can as well.
Thank you.
All right. Next agenda item. Should IOG Cardano Foundation Emurgo vote in Catalyst?
Yes, so I put it on there as pointed out in Slack. I don't expect looking at the time, especially now, to fully discuss this, but this is a question that came up from several sides, and I would maybe give some homework to think about it and actually make this a discussion, unless someone really feels prepared to concisely discuss this. But I thought this might
Well,
be an
maybe
interesting
maybe
topic.
we could at least get a summary of the issue or the thoughts around this. I mean, my first
yeah,
instinct was say yes, they should vote, but obviously the question's being raised, so there must be some concerns.
Oh,
I'm actually
I would think
surprised
so.
to hear you say yes, they should vote.
Yeah, me too,
because
actually.
Oh,
your
okay.
traumatic town hall presentation.
About the whales.
yeah, I mean, I
Okay.
was going to say no, they should not vote. But before I jump to that conclusion, what's the history? Do we know? Have they been voting?
From the Cardano
Oh, I'm
Foundation, I
misunderstanding the
hear
question then. I think I see, excuse me, I misunderstood what the question was. I thought you were referring to the membership in the circle. You're saying within
Oh.
the catalyst process itself. Oh, okay, that's a much more interesting question, yeah.
Just for on the record, is
And
that
you're
something
saying
you
should the
can,
corporate, you're not referring to individuals, you're referring to the
correct.
corporate.
Yeah, correct. Because Emurgo is
Yeah.
not part of
Oh,
the circle,
yeah.
but I should
Okay.
have made
So
that more
I
clear.
would be no on that, given the research I've done, for sure.
I think there is a lack
Because
of
until you have
clarity.
until you have a solution for controlling, the influence of large wallets, this is a particularly sensitive case. So I would agree that is problematic. And as a first step, saying no to, these large corporations that had initial funds would be a wise thing to do.
I would like to return to what Allison raised on the history. There is a perception among people in the community that IOG, Cardano Foundation, and Emurgo do vote. Is that justified? What's the history? How can we be assured that they're not voting?
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to respond, but I don't know, Raymond, did you want to echo what he was referring to, or should I go?
You can go ahead.
Okay, yeah, my understanding is that it has been relatively open. There has been no specific limitations on who can vote. Everyone can participate. I don't know the amount of ADA that IOG people have per se. It may not be representative of a whale. So I don't know if there's a one-to-one correlation, but there is a deeper concern of whales of exchanges voting in the catalyst process. That have massive amounts that could easily sway. So there's definitely some things we're researching on how can we protect from that, but it is something that has been relatively open so far, in my view. from what I've seen, although I have seen some sentiment that IOG shouldn't be voting. I think I heard there was some statement made about that, but there's nothing official.
Raymond,
Yeah.
Allison.
Yeah, it's a big conversation, definitely. It comes down to voting power and the way that catalyst voting is currently set up. For me, for me to say yes to this, we would need to have a proposal review, refinement, presentation process that is more mature and easier to digest for the voting community. I think at this point, my concern and fear would be that because there's so many, and because it's such a time-consuming process to find the good ones, there could be some not so great ones that slip by and get those votes, right? So it's really about the confidence in our process, in our ability to present the most equitable, harmonious possibilities and potential for the expansion of our community. And at which point we could trust that the voting power would flow in the direction that is best for the outcome and the vision of the project as a whole. But that is so close to being so altruistic. It's sort of like, is this even possible? And then at the same time, we're looking at, this is voting. Who are we to restrict the inclusion and the participation of any power that has ADA? How can we even say that some can and some cannot? I think if anything, we can focus more of our attention on making sure that the network protects against centralization as much as possible. I think if anything, that's really where the energy should go.
Yes, and if I could respond to that, so there's some clarity about it. And your two key points are one, voting power and how you define that, and then also centralization. And that's exactly why, given the current process, if you know that there are particular organizations that have very large ADA, then it is important to have a mechanism to restrict them from the current process. Because voting power isn't measured by how many ADA you have. It's measured by what's the probability that your vote will be decisive in deciding yes or no on a project. And that increases quadratically. So, and that's where it becomes very skewed and very centralized given the current distribution of ADA in the community. And that's not true of just Cardano, that's really true of any economic system. So what we presented, and I don't want to go through that today, is just there are processes we could develop that could change that and ensure that there's a more even distribution of voting power. But we're not there yet. There's a lot of steps that have to be accomplished in order for that to be true.
Allison, then Harris.
And I thank you, Harris, for your comments, because you made me realize that I think we need to clarify even the terms that we're using. So to take the Cardano Foundation first, when I think about the Cardano Foundation voting, I mean the Cardano Foundation voting with the large amount of ADA that legal entity, it's a official Stiftung in Switzerland, that foundation controls. And I think the process for how they vote their foundation ADA should be just as rigorous and transparent as the process they go through for how they stake that ADA, which I know is a huge topic of controversy because it has the same effect. How does this central authority that's supposed to be a guardian and a steward of resources for the community, how does it make decisions around the power that it has with the ADA that it controls? So that's one question. And then IOG, I was not envisioning individual IOG employees. I was thinking of IOG as number one, the legal entity, and it occurs to me, maybe the legal entity IOG doesn't actually control that much ADA. I don't really know, but I think it's somebody within IOG that controls the Cardano treasury that is actually being distributed. I mean, somebody at IOG controls that wallet on behalf of the community. And it's that ADA that I was thinking of. If it's being voted, we should absolutely have a transparent and clear process around how those decisions are being made, because those are community resources. And then actually I have another question. Is Charles voting his ADA? Has he ever talked about that?
I certainly don't know if he's actually voting directly. And again, if we keep this encapsulated into Catalyst proposal voting, right? Because there's larger decisions on Cardano itself, potentially in the future, that will be in consideration. But as a Catalyst circle, you know, if someone has a proposal on Africa, you know, do we want Charles voting on it? Right now, there's no limitation. Potentially, he could. You know, I don't believe that the Treasury, that specific address that holds the Treasury, is doing any type of voting. I don't believe that to be true. And, you know, I believe there's a few powers that actually do control that Treasury, and it's not just IOG. And so I think there was a couple of great points, Raymond, that you raised. And, you know, the whole notion of the voting power, all of these things lend themselves into Catalyst parameters, right? So for Catalyst specifically, you know, how do we vote? What is the voting power? We're currently using an ADA as the power to do that. Those are Catalyst parameters, right? So the whole goal is to shift that decision from IOG to the circle to actually start helping make those decisions. And that lends itself into this additional governing body of technical council that can aid in the research and, you know, perhaps has time to go do that research as needed to make sure that we're not going to mess something else up in the process by allowing a particular methodology to be applied. You know, as much as I love the concept of quadratic, you know, that's a great concept, Kenric, and you know, potentially the Catalyst circle plus the Catalyst Technical Council could decide to try it, right? But that's the whole objective of shifting into this bicameral governance structure, is that then it's not just IOG making these decisions.
Just in the interest of moving on, we have at least 2 other juicy agenda items. I'm going to lean back on the suggestion at the very top that all CCv2 members formulate positions and come back to report. And I appreciate everyone's thoughts and comments. I think it's a super interesting conversation, and I do agree we need some transparency, clarity, and then we need to come up with a strategy or recommendations as a circle on what we can do. And perhaps that leads into the whole next discussion around the circle bicameral model and how we exercise that. It looks like we have a lot of parameters we could already suggest changing or tweaking or adding. So is that, Harris, your agenda item?
I didn't add that explicitly,
Okay.
but I'm certainly happy to talk about it or open, because we did, you know, kind of present that a little bit in the last circle. We made that sort of a little bit clearer at town hall. But if anyone has feedback or, you know, want to discuss that specific approach, you know, certainly open to feedback from the circle.
Just before Kenric, unless you're the person who put it on the agenda.
I didn't put it on.
Who put it in the agenda and why, just for clarity? To make sure we address it properly. You're muted,
Alice,
Allison.
I don't think we can hear. You look like you're talking, but we can't hear you.
Yeah,
I think the question was who put it on the agenda.
I think it's Allison, and she
Yeah.
had some difficulties with her mic.
My earpods died. I was trying to charge them and
Oh.
use my speaker. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
I think that was me. And I think I put it in before the town hall. So the town hall actually answered, helped clarify things a bit more. And I think where I was getting a bit lost and what I wanted to make sure was clarified was the audit, the third feature, the third body, the audit body. So the circle is elected. The CTC as of now will be appointed by IOG. And I wanted to just make sure I understood we're all on the same page about what's happening with that third group. And I think, Stephen, that's you're running with that, right? In combination with IOG?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it comes down to the proposal, the community governance oversight proposal. The first is comprised of a team drawn from what might be called the Catalyst audit community. And no, it's not voted for, but it's people who have an audit background, who have funded proposals, who've had funded proposals in the Auditability Challenge, and people from the Auditability Challenge team, includes myself. Matthias is also a part of this as well. So from the point of view of, where there's no reference in the proposal to whether that team should be voted for or not, which we could discuss. My position is this is more about capability, people who are able to address audit issues from the community and have proven themselves to have that capability to do that. However, that's not necessarily a perfect answer, so I'd be welcome feedback on that.
Well, I think my initial question was just when Harris proposed the community governance oversight team, that it not duplicate the really amazing work that you and the quality assurance team were already doing. And so I guess my first question is there coordination now? And it sounds like there is.
Yeah, there was never really a quality assurance team. So in a sense, this has had the effect of creating one. So officially, what there was, to give a bit of background, I'm not sure of the name. There was a kind of an audit working group which met semi-irregularly with IOG over the past few weeks. I think Chris Bard was leading on that. Then there was community efforts that were running kind of in parallel with that, which included myself and George Lovegrove. But actually, there's two proposals now. There's an audit circle proposal, and then there's a governance oversight proposal. And this has had the effect of focusing who those team members are and are contributing, or the question of who they should be, and what their remit is. Particularly, well, the remit is, I mean, I argued for, and I think Dawes sort of agreed to break it into two. One where there's a community governance oversight of parameter changes, yes, but also the challenge teams, for example, and also Catalyst Circle oversight as well. And then I was arguing for, and this is what we have, is a separate audit circle proposal to cover funded proposals. Because we think there's different issues with funded proposals that are more to do with risk issues. Like, for example, because we're scaling so quickly, we're concerned that there may be bad players and things like that. So that's the kind of situation. So in a sense, I would say, hopefully, things have progressed. So
then my question, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead of the people with their hands raised, but the question I was trying to ask with that bullet point then is your governance oversight proposal the fleshing out of the governance oversight body Harris proposed? And what happens if that proposal is not funded?
Yes, it is a fleshing out. It is a kind of a compromise because obviously IOG have their own approach to these things, and this is a negotiation with the community, so the audit community. So I kind of shoehorned it into proposal deliverables. I won't go into detail there, but you possibly go and read the proposal. This is quite detailed. There are deliverables. People are being paid for attending meetings, that kind of thing. If it gets funded or not funded, I just don't know the answer to that, really. I mean, but the people are continuing to do work, but if they're not funded, we probably get a situation where there'll be a risk situation of sustainability, of course, and people having interest. It wouldn't be sustainable not to fund it. This is very hard work, a lot of it.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So, and
so we just get the Treasury to vote for it, and it'll be funded.
Yeah, hopefully it's voted for. I mean, and the merits of these two proposals are sponsored by Circle, even perhaps, and promoted at Town Hall, or are communicated by the members here, hopefully.
Thanks, Stephen. Kenric and then Harris.
Yeah, I had some feedback, and particularly because I wasn't here for the last meeting. I have concerns about the technical council being voted, these being elected positions by the community. And let me explain my thoughts around this. For the Circle, I think an election is very appropriate because each of us is representing a portion of the community. And so where you're representing that community and there's an expectation that the role is to communicate and facilitate that community's representation for for Catalyst, then an election process and all the ramifications of that with regard to the politics involved in winning an election, that seems really appropriate. But when we come to a technical council, each of those members is representing technical aspects of the parameters of the Catalyst process. And I'm concerned that the type of person who would fulfill that role very well would not be inclined to do well in a political election process, and that we may end up with not the right kind of people in a technical council. So I feel that council should be an appointment either by the Circle or possibly by a board that's elected to actually do the interviewing process and making an appointment. I haven't thought through, what the process should be. But and again, even this first step, right? So IOG is making appointments based on their technical expertise about who really understands the process and can represent these parameters. So I think that's very positive, and that's a great first step. And I think what we need to think about is what should the appointment process be for this role rather than an election process.
Very good points. Thanks, Kenric. Harris and then Raymond.
Yeah, definitely great points, Kenric. I think that we didn't want to position it like, okay, this Catalyst Technical Council is only going to be appointed by IOG moving forward, that we wanted it to be run by the community. And I think, shuffling how we make that selection can be defined for sure, and should be defined in the future, ideally by Circle and ideally, by the council. So these are items that we can have on the agenda of things that we want to discuss in more detail. But the intention was that this group, would need to be validated as experts. The process of how to validate those experts is certainly an ongoing thing, because that will live on into the Voltaire era, as well as the continuance of Cardano management over time. And part of the objective of Catalyst is to do this early experimentation, try these models out, see how that fits, to select maybe technical people that will vote at the protocol level. And there's some processes that we're considering for, delegating to experts to appoint experts. as a potential path to do these things. And that's certainly something that is being discussed. And so I think we have a lot of opportunities to manage this, and a lot of these things fall into the category of catalyst parameters. And like, for instance, the note you made, Allison, on the the Treasury votes, then it wins, but there's actually criteria for who actually wins. You have to have a certain percentage of the total Treasury. You have to have a certain amount of thumbs up and thumbs down and a percentage for that. There's actually criteria that has been sort of slated that is governed currently by IOG or selected by IOG that really should fall into decision-making power of these bodies. And that's part of the reason to start small with a couple of parameters. And the goal is to actually expand that to most of the parameters will be decided by these governing bodies. And we need to do that slowly, and we can't do it too hastily, but instead of back of the napkin, decision by a few people in IOG, it is an educated decision by the council, the technical folks that have the research background, and the circle to make those determinations moving forward. And we want to actually move this quickly, right? We don't want to make this a 3-year process to do this transition. And so we want to start iteration right away to try and facilitate the movement of these types of decisions outside of IOG.
Thanks, Harris. And we need at least one more thing on the agenda. So Raymond and then Stephen, and then we're going to move on, since I don't think the agenda item was asking for us to come up with any actions or solutions at this point, rather than just discuss. So I'd like to have 2 more people, and then we can move on. So Raymond.
Yeah, I'm going to draw on my college days pre-med, and just bring a metaphor in here, and that is, with respect to a bicameral model or a circle model, take a step back and look at the whole ecosystem and community being a living organism. And each of these bodies are cells within that organism. And cells lead to tissues, and tissues lead to organs. So there's a complexity there. And I see that with respect to governance, which is what this seems to be focusing on the most, that's going to be an organ within the whole organism of Cardano. So I'm personally open to the bicameral model, where you bring CTC and that process and how those people are selected. I remain open to that. I think the thing to constantly be aware of, I guess, and cautious with is the complexity that we create. Try to keep it as simple and elegant as possible, and yet at the same time, have a cell where necessary for the function of the organ of that organism. In this case, Voltaire.
Thanks very much, Stephen.
Thank you, Laurie. Just have a very brief question. Hopefully, Kenric can answer. Would some form of delegated voting, guided by expert advice, resolve your concerns, Kenric, in terms of the appointment of a technical counsel?
By delegated voting, you mean that ADA holders would first vote for a representative, and then those representatives would choose a technical person? Is that what you mean?
Something along those lines, yes.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's kind of what I have in mind, is that way you have an election process where the community has some input, but then the people who are elected are kind of charged with the responsibility of reviewing qualifications for technical experts and then making an appointment based on a careful review of the qualifications. So yes, that's one process that could work. And yes.
Amazing, fascinating conversation. And I look forward to seeing how this evolves over the coming weeks and months. as we continue the experiment. All right, the next item, and just as a kind of a, I'm going to put on my process hat for a second. For the next agenda, as people add items, it would be really nice to have people's names next to it, just to have a little bit of clarity on whose line item it is. And but the next one is about the concerns around the scope increase of the admin team. And
I raised this on behalf of the admin team. So I was at a meeting of the admin team last Friday, I think it was, and there was a number of concerns from all members raised there. I can only sort of say the headlines for those, which were, I think it was related to the the admin scope expansion proposal. There was a feeling it wasn't developed or discussed enough by the admin team and was being pushed a bit by IOG. There were fears that from some team members that the admin team was expanding too quickly, a significant increase in workload. There's some concerns that community money has been used to support an IOG directed project, and a sense that they are not, that they don't want to become IOG employees, or have that perception of IOG before employees. So very briefly, those are the concerns that came from across the board, from people attending the admin, the Circle admin meeting last Friday. But if JP or Norrie would like to step in and add to that, I'd be welcome.
JP can probably add some more color. I told the team that I was going to stay neutral as the facilitator of this meeting, just so that I can maintain.
Yeah. Hey guys. So again, I want to preface this with, in principle, we definitely support the idea, and listening to these conversations here, it's exciting to talk about the transition to the community. I feel or not just me, but the team was expressed. We're very new, and we're kind of a baby team that has been slapdash together to support it. And we're, even getting our coordination down and our working together. Like, as you've mentioned on the call, there's many things that you need from the CC admin team to help support your roles that are not developed, that we don't have the support and structure. And so we're a little nervous about tacking on an additional responsibility and responsibility center, because even to get those people to be ready to participate, that's already onboarding, training, drafting. We're writing a playbook so we can do it open source to train people. None of that work is really done, and right now none of us are being paid. And so our fear is that as we continue to tack these things on, is that, like you said before, it's not sustainable to not be paid. People could burn out. We need to, I think, get better processes. And we really want to feel that our voices and our participation in this are represented and respected. And I think there was just a bit of a concern that we had decided on our meeting, or at least we wanted to push back and say, here's our concerns. And then by the time that was done, the decision was already made. And so we just felt that was not necessarily the best approach to take with the CC admin team when we're doing our best to support. And so we just like to be engaged and included in some of that a little bit more, realizing all of the difficulties and functions that we're all expressing here. So in the most open and accepting way, thanks.
Yeah, I'd only add to that. I mean, I was at the meeting, and there are some new people from the community who are contributing, particularly on the Treasury team and elsewhere. And I think we just need to be mindful about the relationship we develop, not just IOG actually, but all of us, between ourselves and admin going forward, to meet people's expectations and communicate well, I suppose. That's what I got from it, really.
Yeah, it definitely heard some of the sentiment and sort of the Slack channel for sure. And you know, we can definitely pace this as we need to, and we get to decide as a group to do that. I think my introduction to the admin team is you guys seem so organized and so on top of everything that perhaps I felt maybe there was some great structure already in place, but we definitely want to give time to ensure the structure is there. And I think the intention is that we try to find ways to compensate the admin team for the amazing work that is being done. And so that was the goal of trying to create proposals on top of trying to not give total power of decision making to one body, which is the circle. So we were trying to maybe attempt to do too many things at once. And that's sort of part of the experiment that we're trying. So, you know, hopefully, you know, incentives, you know, come in for the admin team for sure. We want to make sure that's that is in place, because we want to make this sustainable. We want to make an environment where people are you know, compensated and certainly you know, time is super valuable. So we want to make sure that that's in place. And to move the needle forward as we are trying to see what we can do to have these decisions being made, you know, maybe we need a breakout discussion on what is minimum that we need to make those kinds of transitions happen, and not try to do wholesale changes, but do that as a concerted effort together.
Thanks, Eric. I think those are all really good points. And just to add some more context, the CC admin team themselves are experimenting with other ways of making things a little more sustainable for the team. So we now have a stake pool called, the ticker is admin. And that's another alternative experiment, so that if people find it valuable and delegate stake to the admin team, then maybe it'll start generating some revenue to make it a little more sustainable as well. And we don't have to rely on having proposals funded every round to keep the team around. But also super excited to see if there's anything through Khaled parameters to make it so it's similar to the circle and the CTC itself, that it's part of the organizational costs that we just reward as part of the duties. And I think we're trying to come up with playbooks and different things to really nail down our role, responsibility, scope, and what we do, to make it very clear to the community. And hopefully that will also help clarify some stuff and make it very clear what is being paid for and what services are being rendered.
And what was that stake pool again, Nori?
Admin, ADMIN, is the stake pool name.
All right, awesome.
Maybe one of the things we can do going forward is kind of, if we're going to define a new role, right, that someone's going to fulfill, that there needs to be some clarity up front, whether that's a volunteer position, whether that's compensated, or that's part of their responsibilities with a corporation that's funding that work. And that way, you know, there should be a kind of a responsibility of not creating positions and then not having clarity about how those positions are going to be funded, so people are compensated appropriately.
It's also a perennial problem in capitalist, where you know, there's been a legacy in the past of volunteerism for very positive reasons, but that is now, I think we're now moving into a new phase where that really isn't sustainable very much anymore, where there's a lot of work that people have to take on almost immediately. They're very enthusiastic people, but yeah, I think what you just highlighted, Kenric, that kind of clear distinctions are needed. Yeah.
All right. And yeah, I think a lot of the sentiment from the team is just finding ways and mechanisms of having better communication and joint decision making, especially particularly on the topics that affect the team themselves, like scope expansion and things like that. The team would like to be part of that conversation. And then just to highlight as we're talking about this, I just want to say we had a little bit of a mix-up last minute. We didn't get the time zones correct, and we missed the final submission deadline for the CC admin team proposal updates we were working on. Thankfully, we had an earlier edit up there with the basic team requirements, but the stuff we were working on and trying to find the actual budget and parameters around was for the CTC edition. And so we missed getting that in. So I don't want to have the same situation as Circle V1 and have a discussion around whether we can change proposals after the fact. But I just want to put out there, we don't have the budget increase to cover that in the current funding. So if we do want to move forward with that in the next 3 months, we probably need to talk about what that looks like, what the involvement is, and how we can adjust things.
And Nori, can I ask a clarifying question there? You're talking about the proposal to increase the funding for the admin team in recognition of the additional work that needs to be taken on to support the CTC. Is that accurate?
The proposal itself is to increase the scope of the admin team beyond one secretary and one facilitator to pay for a team. And then in addition, we were trying to get in the CTC scope increase as well, but that's what we were working on last minute and missed the deadline due to some confusion around time zones.
So the budget for that is left off, Nori, is that?
Yeah, so there's,
okay.
The budget is 15,000 and the CTC part would have been another 10. So okay. the 10 is missing.
I mean, we have some rapid funding mechanism. I mean, we might have to be creative from different funding sources.
Yeah, I'm sure there are options. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. So it might be a good opportunity to exercise some of these rapid funding mechanisms.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add, that seems like a critical thing to be funded. Thing might not be the right word. Thank you, JP.
Okay. We're in the last 5 minutes of the meeting. I just wanted to touch really quickly on the remaining agenda items. They are about infrastructure, emails and stuff. As I mentioned, I have a meeting later today with the key holder for a lot of that. So we're going to get that transferred to accounts that the entire admin team has access to. So any one of us are able to unblock people and get things moving. And then probably next week, we can start working with you all individually for your needs on websites, email accounts, domain names, whatever it is you need. So yeah, just be a little more patient and we'll get that going today. And then hopefully by next week, we'll have everything up and online and in the hands of the whole admin team. Last item was GitHub tasks. I'm not sure who added that.
Wait a second, I just lost my mouse. But yes, this was me. So we have this Trello, and we have also the GitHub repository which has copy of that. I wonder, do we all have access to that right now, or there is only few of us? And these action items you create, I feel like, should we put something like make another Trello board for these kinds of action items? Like we have then problem sensing and actually something we can move from one place to another for, I don't know, better clarity. Although Word document for now it is kind of fine for these action items too. But I think at some point we do want to practice and move on to something which is more agile and more understandable, because there are few things what even in Slack what come up and they just get lost in threads, and I see that we are not actually really used to Slack using.
These are very good points. The admin team right now is in the process of moving from Trello to GitHub. And using the GitHub issue tracking. And there is a board that mirrors that. But I think that's a very good point. maybe we need that as the strategic board, and then we could have a tactical board to move all of these action items. Because I lose track of things as well if they're not in something like that. All right.
Yeah, that might be necessary. I guess I would just be careful about not overdoing the processes. So I guess for myself, I'd like to see the focus on getting the Trello board moved to GitHub, and then that we're using it and that we're actually getting value out of that before we create another board.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's, in fact, a Trello board replacement is already set up, and returning to something I think Harris referred to. I think we should, as Circle, return to an emphasis on using the Trello board, the prioritized problems, because that was the initial means by which we identified and pursued and progressed prioritized problems, and there's still some on the board. I know this meeting has been taken up by other agenda items, but maybe we should be careful not to fall into this pattern where we seem to be falling into a pattern where we discuss these subjects, and that takes up the whole meeting. Maybe we should put the prioritized problems at the beginning of the meeting, and if there's space for discussion like we had at this meeting, that's at the end. I know that might be a bit of a spoil sport, but we're here to we're here to problem sense problems from the community. We're not here just to discuss our own issues. I'm not putting it that well, but yeah. So, but there is a replacement for a Trello board setup on the access side. Because of the proposal commitments, I haven't really been, we only now can turn our priority onto that, but we can then quickly get people's GitHub addresses and then allocate issues to people and get all that running quite smoothly for the next Circle meeting.
Sounds like a good action item. Thank you, Stephen. Which actually is a good segue. You proposed a process change, and we've reintroduced the end of meeting feedback form. So that's at the bottom of the agenda, but I just put it into Zoom chat as well. So if you all want to open that, it's designed to be a quick 1 or 2 minute thing. So it'd be great to get your feedback on how the meeting went, any suggestions for how to improve things. Or anything else that you would like to put in there. And we're using this as kind of a process thing at our CC admin team meetings to reflect upon and improve the process as well. So if anything comes out of these, we will definitely bring them back to the Circle as part of the conversation as we cycle through continuous improvement. All right, we're at time. Very quickly, maybe let's just do a checkout and see where everybody's at.
Just have to,
Allison.
sorry guys, Nori, I just have to jump off right now because I have a
Okay.
work meeting that I have to go to. But I got all the notes. I'll edit them and clean them up a little and share them after.
Okay, thanks JP.
Guys.
All right,
Thank you. Great work.
Allison and then Stephen.
Great meeting. I thoroughly enjoy working with all of you.
Stephen.
Yes, fascinating coverage of subjects and some concerns were aired, which I'm pleased to hear. So yeah.
Nice.
Just want to echo this same sentiment. Great meeting. Lots to think about.
Excellent. Tevo, then Kenric.
When proposals are in discussion, this gets so long. But I like the fact that we got several action items out of that. I hope we follow along with and bring results for the next meeting.
Great. Kenric and then Raymond.
Yeah, great meeting, and I really look forward to getting together again in 2 weeks.
All right, Raymond, then Harris.
Yeah, great discussion. And I also really looking forward to balancing the discussion out with working on things together. Really appreciate all of you.
Thank you. Harris.
Yeah, definitely really great discussion today. We are trying to make some sort of big shifts, and so this definitely steps us out of our typical pattern. But I totally agree. We should try to make sure that we're out there sensing problems from the community, bringing that back into our next meeting together. And if we can spend a little bit more time in Slack as we sort of go through the next 2 weeks to really have some concrete discussions and make sure that we're tracking these action items and that we have a good follow-up. And let's try to definitely bring more into the next meeting agenda. I'll definitely need to improve that for myself and make sure that I have clear items and that we can really get through something, continue to be constructive as we go through this, but solving the community's problems is our first action point.
Thanks. And I echo that. I think using Slack as a communication mechanism to work together outside of meeting time would be really great. And we'll, as the admin team, we'll get everything transitioned over to all the different things, GitHub and email transfers and all that. So we'll get that done. And I just want to thank everybody for showing up today and being present and contributing and being an awesome crew. It's really been a pleasure working with you all. So let's keep it up.
And thank you, Nori.
Yeah.
Awesome facilitation, as always.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nori.
That's great.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great
Enjoy
couple
the
weeks.
rest of your
Take
week.
care.
Yeah.
Thanks for surviving the proposal stage, which is I think the hardest.
It's so hard.
Thank you guys. Well done.
All right. Thanks.
Take care.